Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 are strange movies, especially when putting them together. The first one being a simple but incredibly stylized revenge quest following one of the best action protagonists of all time, the Bride, or later name revealed, Beatrix Kiddo in Volume 2. She embarks on revenge against her former group, the Deadly Viper Assassination Squad, or Divas. The Bride, played by Uma Thurman, is iconic. Both movies surround this character with great villains, compelling dialogue, solid action choreography, a lot of blood, and a lot of sauce, as my friend Obi would say. But Volume 2 is a different experience entirely. Though being a direct sequel and really one movie, the second film takes its time to build the world of assassins through dialogue that can be missed if not locked in, and challenging the Bride differently than the first. Instead of it being just external forces she faces, it's her having to look inward to find the strength to keep going despite adversity. I've had problems with Quentin Tarantino as a director, mainly because of one film in particular that maybe I'll get to, or maybe I'll never do a Tarantino video essay again. But he's weird, and all his fans can at least concede on that point. From foot fetish kinks, to writing himself into films to say the N-word, to breaking the N-word counter, to defending Roman Polanski and being friends with Harvey Weinstein. Let's just be for real. But he's one of the best directors of all time in my opinion. There are some choices he makes in film that I not only find entertaining, but I actually respect from my moral standpoint. So after being a huge fan, to being a hater, to now moving more neutral, I think it's time to give my thoughts on QT's work, and what's a better way to start than to talk about the one with arguably the least substance, but the most style. Part 1, Bloody Affair. I want to talk about the action in these movies first, because while the choreography isn't the best thing I've ever seen, or the execution of the choreography, I love the creative choices QT makes in this film, inspired by so many 70s action films and Asian film motifs, highlighting to many people one of the best sequences of the first film and arguably one of the best action scenes ever. Let's talk about the Crazy 88 scene. It's iconic, it's bloody, it's black and white, it's Kurosawa inspired, and every time I watch it, I find something different to focus on. One of the best parts of the fight scene is the structure of it all, from the Crazy 88 showdown, to the Bride fighting Gogo one-on-one, to back to the 88, all while using the entire set in the choreography and making the fight feel as big and overwhelming as possible. To then, the samurai showdown in the snow between the Bride / Beatrix / codename Black Mamba versus Oren Ishii / codename Cottonmouth, played amazingly by Lucy Liu. This is my favorite Lucy Liu performance ever. I love Oren in this movie. The incredibly stylish but seamless anime flashback she gets definitely helps you connect to her character, but her presence and look matched with the words in the script make her a unforgettable character for me. And if we ever got some Kill Bill related media in the future, I'd love to see this character again in a more defined and elongated way. Either while Beatrix was in the coma for 4 years, seeing a more in-depth look into Oren, the Crazy 88, and their reign over Japan, or seeing her be a young assassin in Japan before joining the Divas. What I believe Oren represents in the Bride's story is the truth in revenge. Oren's flashback details a narrative of murder and tragedy, birthing a monster that couldn't be stopped. Connecting the audience to that path with Oren is the only connection QT allows us to have with her, but not just because it allows us to detach from the slice and dice that ensues, but it also creates a parallel between Beatrix and Oren, both becoming something unstoppable because of unimaginable tragedy. In my interpretation of both movies, and their fight in particular, so much is said with their gazes towards each other. So much history that seems bigger than just being a part of the same squad before. Even Oren being able to kill Beatrix after her first hit on her, after slicing her back, but allowing her to get up and to die as a samurai, is a show of respect for her as a warrior. And the apology Oren gives, which feels like it has a double meaning. Her apologizing for disrespecting Beatrix's skill as a swordsman because Beatrix is white, when Oren herself has dealt with grief because of her mixed heritage. Also apologizing probably because she already knows how skilled Beatrix is, coupled with her chronicled accomplishments and respect for Asian culture and fighting styles shown more in Volume 2. It also feels like this could be an apology for being a part of the massacre that left Beatrix in a coma. because of her own tragedy that she had to deal with and the hypocritical nature of her involvement. The way Beatrix accepts her apology and asks if she is ready right before their last clash feels different from the obvious challenge but how easy it was to kill the 88, really 50 members of henchmen if you want to be technical, before fighting Oberyn. Letting all that pent-up rage out on these masked, nameless individuals, but for both characters coming to terms with what they knew had to be done because of both of their experiences with revenge, past and present. Seeing a former ally become your foe, and for Oberyn being on the other side of the blade makes the fight feel more solemn but inevitable instead of satisfying, which follows the rest of the bride's journey but in different ways. Also, for my own headcanon, because of Beatrix's connection and respect towards Asian culture and people like Hattori Hanzo and Pai Mei, I assume that out of all the people on the squad, Beatrix was the closest with Oberyn and made her number one on her list because of the betrayal hitting the hardest. You could even interpret that we are only able to get the anime flashback because that's a story that Beatrix knew because Oberyn felt comfortable to share that with her. My main evidence for that is because we don't get any other flashback for any other character a part of the Divas before, and the one that is narrating that anime flashback is Beatrix herself. So I do believe that that was a shared story from one warrior to the next. Part 2, Copperhead. The Copperhead snake to many is a symbol of transformation, healing, and the cycle of life and death and spiritual symbolism. The first fight in Volume 1 is really the second slaying in the bride's revenge quest. Vernita Green / codename Copperhead, played by Vivica A. Fox. Another performance that I love, though it is criminally short. Vivica A. Fox is great and balances the blaxploitation badass assassin and the mother trying to protect her daughter and escape the consequences in front of her. Though it being a small scene, she leaves a great impact and gives good insight to the past these women shared together. To me, this fight is iconic. From B pulling up in the pussy wagon to the door opening, siren in the red color grade over her eyes, all the way up until the fake out with the cereal, B delivering the finishing blow, throwing her knife and telling Vernita's daughter that if she wants revenge one day, she'll be waiting. The greatness of this fight scene, outside of the great cinematography, execution of choreography, compelling writing and acting, and it being a great hook to get you into the film. For me, what's amazing about this fight is the respect Beatrix has for what Vernita is trying to do, despite her being a part of the massacre at Two Pines. It hit me harder after watching Volume 2 when Bill asked Beatrix, "Did you really think your life in El Paso would work?" It's interesting Beatrix gets asked that question at the end of her journey, because for the audience, the beginning of this journey poses the same question in silence when she arrives on Vernita's doorstep. Two badass women tearing up a suburban home, kicks, punches, grabbing knives, ready to duel until one is dead, until the school bus shows up, and then they are just two mothers trying their best around a child. The look Vernita gives to Beatrix as Nikki walks to the door is a cry for help, when knowing she has no right to ask, and yet she tries anyway. Not to appeal to Beatrix's motherly instincts, but because the last thing she wants is for Nikki to see the life Vernita escaped from. And despite the monster the bride is, because of the betrayal she faced, Beatrix sees the mother within herself and respects the mother Vernita has become despite the inevitable. It's honestly beautiful storytelling plus acting by two amazing actresses. The fact that you can see them doing a lot of these stunts is incredible, and the scene itself and the way that things are structured narratively makes everything feel so much more gray, and I like that nuance. Though Vernita acted in the massacre at Two Pines, killing people Beatrix loved and leaving her in a coma and taking away her chance at a better life for her daughter, what makes Beatrix any different when killing Vernita in her home while her daughter Nikki is upstairs? And the tragic beauty is that Beatrix knows she's no different. The path of revenge is deceptive. It's your choice, but once you take those steps, it feels like it chose you. Like it's inevitable. You're gonna hear me say that a lot. I would assume, especially for an assassin. One of the famous lines Beatrix says to most of the people on her kill list is, "We have unfinished business." As if things couldn't be different. As if she has no control over her choices anymore. As if it would have always come to this. Which leads me to the last moment in the sequence, where Beatrix kills Vernita, turns around and sees Nikki standing there. Beatrix seems almost embarrassed by the truth in her actions, knowing she just ruined another child's life, which is why she turns away from her first. But the conditioning of her life has made this seem almost like a rite of passage. One of the things I love about how Beatrix fights, especially with each diva, is the fear you see on her face in combat. Not out of fear of death, but understanding how formidable her foes are firsthand, and the fear of not getting the revenge she yearns for. But when talking to Nikki, Beatrix is honest, saying, "Your mother had it coming," but understanding that changes nothing because who knows what Beatrix did for Bill in her past? Who has she killed? What other lives has she ruined? So when she tells Nikki,
"When you grow up, if you still feel raw about it, I'll be waiting."
it's acknowledgement of her guilt and shame, but also in a subtle way a cry for help. I'd say slightly for forgiveness. She knows she doesn't deserve, like Vernita in the beginning, but also a hope that she didn't set another young girl on the same path her and her former squad all chose to walk. I doubt we'll ever get a follow-up on Nikki's story. If we do, fan cast is obviously Zendaya, but Taylor Russell I think would be great in a Tarantino film, especially something like Kill Bill Volume 3. Not asking for it personally, but I'd be there opening night if it happened. It just can't be called Kill Bill Volume 3. It doesn't make sense. She wouldn't be going after Bill. And if you think that that's a good title, you're wrong.
I killed your master, and now I'm gonna kill you too. With your own sword, no less. Which in the very immediate future will become my sword. Bitch. You don't have a future.
Part 3, Eye for an Eye. The one in the Deadly Viper assassination squad that always made me the most uncomfortable is L. Driver, / codename California Mountain Snake, played by Daryl Hannah. I would assume the least formidable in combat, but the best at stealth and an expert with poison. Ever since I was a kid watching this movie, she just creeped me out. But after watching the film this last time, especially Volume 2, I started to pick up hints about the depth of her character and the true sadness behind her anger and murderous nature. There's not much to grasp onto with these next two characters I'll discuss, sadly, but even though it's headcanon shit, I think it tracks. When we first meet Elle, she is in disguise as a nurse at the hospital Beatrix is staying in while comatose. Her goal is to poison her, but before she does, Elle says something important, giving insight into how she sees Beatrix.
I might never have liked you. Point in fact, I despise you. But that shouldn't suggest that I don't respect you.
As she is about to inject poison into Bee's body, she says,
Dying in our sleep is a luxury that our kind is rarely afforded. My gift to you.
These lines suggest an envy Elle has towards Beatrix. Even while she's in a coma, her child stolen from her belly, and nothing but vulnerable. The respect is from the undeniable warrior Beatrix is. Even her being alive, despite being jumped by her former squad and shot in the head by her boss, she still breathes. Both Elle and Beatrix are white blonde women who love the same man and had the same master. So I assume that Elle looks at killing Beatrix in this way as peace for herself, finally eliminating this grand shadow that is cast over her all this time. And probably knowing from first-hand experience that she can't beat Beatrix one-on-one if she wakes up. Though, I don't think she'd admit that. As she is about to inject the poison, of course Bill calls and stops her, which makes her very angry. Not because she really wants to kill Beatrix, though she does, but her anger spawns from the fact that in that moment, she realizes her mission that night was to find the woman the man she loves actually loves. And I interpret Elle as a character with a heavily inflated ego and sense of self. So this catatonic reminder that she's second place at best is something she can't handle. But because of who Bill is, she listens and leaves. But before she goes, she tells Beatrix, "Thought that was pretty fucking funny, didn't you? Word of advice, shithead, don't you ever wake up." Now let's talk about Uma Thurman and Daryl Hannah because they did not like each other. which I think is important to their chemistry. And I'll give slight props to QT for pretty solid casting because of the characters they play, though you don't need that to act as rivals. Think of David Corenswet and Nicholas Hoult, both auditioning for Superman and one getting Superman, the other casted as Lex Luthor. I bet it adds into their acting, but they are very cordial in interviews and press runs. Comparing that to Thurman and Hannah not showing up together at award shows, asking to be separated on carpets, blow-ups on set, the beef was real, which led to, I assume, better tension on screen. I bring all this up because I didn't know about it until I was writing this, and I found it interesting. And more than QT, I think Uma Thurman and Daryl Hannah deserve a lot of praise, but I really think Daryl Hannah in particular gets lost in the memory of these movies by some because of her limited screen time. But she's great and plays an evil person in a, at first I thought pretty simple, but upon my rewatches I would say it's a pretty complex performance, and I appreciate Elle Driver as a character more each time I watch these films. Skipping ahead a bit, after Elle poisons Bud, who I will get to after this, and does her evil monologue, key dialogue for me in this monologue is when she says, "The biggest R I feel is regret. Regret that maybe the greatest warrior I've ever met her end at the hands of a bushwhacking, scrub, elky piece of shit like you. That woman deserved better." This means multiple things to me. One, I believe Elle killed Bud to lash out at Bill, knowing how much he loved his brother, and giving him the same grief that she may have felt always being second to Beatrix. Two, Elle saw herself and Beatrix as the same in some capacity, probably better in her mind, but the closest peer she has. So Bud killing her in such a cruel and pathetic way probably felt like she had lost a part of herself. 3. Elle probably hated Bud, like all the other women in the Divas, but put up with Bud because Bill was the boss and his brother. So when Bud said he killed her greatest enemy, there's no way she would take that information with a smile. And 4. California mountain king snakes feed on other snakes in real life. To me, killing Bud and taking the Hanzo sword made for Beatrix to kill Bill specifically was a play to take control, and I assume to try to kill Bill after. But the journey would always feel incomplete for Elle because she wasn't the one who ended the life of Beatrix Kiddo, Bill's love. And more so than anything, I think if Bud wouldn't have buried her alive, just held her hostage, Elle probably would have gotten her wish to kill Beatrix and to be with Bill. But because of Bud's sadistic satisfaction from suffering, and a theory I subscribe to that I found on Reddit, he chose his emotions over logic, and that dominoed into Elle doing the same thing. One more thing before we leave Elle Driver is in the final showdown between B and Elle, the audience gets the reveal that Pai Mei, Bill, then Beatrix's master, is the one who plucked out Elle's eye, and then that Elle poisoned Pai Mei, killing him. Excusing some awkwardly written and delivered dialogue by Daryl Hannah and some weird ADR, this is what made their parallel so concrete, and is a visual representation of why Beatrix is better. Pai Mei, in the context of the film, is a 1,000-year-old Shaolin master martial artist. He's misogynistic, racist, and unforgiving, but obviously has knowledge to give, especially to assassins. But to Elle, he was just an old fool. But to Beatrix, bigger than her getting put on by Bill, when she is humbled by Pai Mei and feeling helpless in her test of strength, she submits to his teachings, knowing without a doubt there's more to learn, dedicating her life to his word, and in doing that, reaped the benefits of his passed down knowledge, now learning more than even Bill did in his tenure, becoming Pai Mei's favorite student. Without him, she doesn't make it halfway through this blood-soaked, vengeful journey. One of the most important things said in this movie is when Pai Mei says, "It's the wood that should fear your hand, not the other way around. No wonder you can't do it. You acquiesce to defeat before you even begin." Yes, Beatrix is punching wood, and later on her journey she uses this technique when she is buried alive. But what he's saying to her is metaphorical. Your mind and heart is what makes you a great warrior. It's not about the pain you avoid, it's about the pain you can endure. And in good filmmaking fashion, the same arm Pai Mei used to force Beatrix into submission to test her resolve is the same arm she used to pluck out Elle's other eye, avenging her fallen master and conquering her greatest rival.
How many times
Part 4, Buddy Boy. Bud slash codename Sidewinder, played by Michael Madsen, is a fucking enigma, and honestly trying to figure out his character almost had me stumped. From comments I've seen on YouTube and Reddit, many people say Bud is their favorite assassin in the story and has one of the best quotes in this movie.
That woman deserves her revenge. And we deserve to die. But then again, so does she. So I guess we'll just see, won't we?
A very important quote that simplifies the movie perfectly by a character that isn't that important in the story for real. But he is a fascinating character, and the glimpses into his past, psyche, and current reality tell you a very bleak story of a man who left his life as a professional assassin for exile. I don't have a clear-cut way I look at Bud anymore, so I think it would be cool to give some options of what I think his perspective is, with help from Reddit, and give some arguments for and against. Bud loved L by Agent 000. Quote, little late, but Red Bud had a relationship with L Driver maybe in the original screenplay. L ultimately chose Bill, which deepened the wedge, and is why L isn't pleased when she learns Bud was the one who called. When I first read this one, I felt like something clicked in my head. Though it being really dark, I like that sort of full circle where Bud loved L loved Bill, and Bill loved Beatrix, so Bud's resentment grew towards Bill because L never saw him as an option. This theory could be even more emboldened when you think about why he would call L and not Bill about burying Beatrix alive. You could argue he wanted to impress her, and L killing Bud could be to get back at Bill for making her a side chick, and for whatever Bud may have put her through with his advancements on her in the past. Pushback on the theory though is that he could also have called her just to get the money for the Hanzo sword, and not deal with his crazy boss and the strip club and live more comfortably, as you can see his frustration building when he is at work. And the conversation L and Bud have before he dies doesn't indicate a lot of history, especially any longing or anything that I can pick up on indicating feelings towards L. They kind of just talk like old co-workers reminiscing on a business that went downhill. I give this theory a partly sunny rating. Bud was against the massacre at Two Pines by the Benron. Quote, it is my theory that Bud was against the attack on Beatrix's wedding rehearsal, and his participation in the massacre marked the breaking point of his relationship with his brother. The first evidence that Bud was against the attempted murder of Beatrix is his response to Bill's offer of assistance. Bud states that he will not run from Beatrix because she deserves her revenge, and he is not one to duck his comeuppance. He knew the massacre was wrong, but he went along with it anyway, out of loyalty to his brother. However, the next thing the two brothers talk about is what really leads me to believe that Bud was so opposed to the massacre that he walked away from Bill for good after his participation in the shooting. Bill asks if Bud has kept up with his swordplay, to which Bud remarks that he pawned his Hanzo sword. This, we later find out, is a lie. So clearly, Bud is only saying this to wound his brother by leading him to believe he sold a priceless gift from his brother for only a couple $100. Even more importantly, when pressed by Bill, Bud reveals that he sold the sword in El Paso. Again, we eventually find out this is a lie, so why El Paso? Bud doesn't live near there, since Beatrix walks from her grave in California in one night. He could have said literally any place in the world. The answer is because the massacre took place in El Paso. Bud is leading his brother to believe that he was so vehemently opposed to the attempt on Beatrix that after, he immediately went and sold his sword and walked away from Bill forever. End quote. Most people I've seen on the internet see Bud in this way. And though every time I watch the movie, it's hard for me to see Bud as a sympathetic character, that might be the point of Madsen's performance. Creating a mask under the guilt and shame of what he was a part of, and this being his story, makes his death sadder in a way. And for many people who believe this logic, they think that he buried Beatrix alive because he knew she trained with Paimon. He probably did as well, and knew of the wood punching training, so putting her in the grave and placing soft dirt on top of the coffin was a test of strength. To me, I can't get behind that. A lot of the burial sequence is what makes me disagree with this theory. The way he threatens her and says, "I want to bury you," and other degrading statements he says, doesn't feel like there's any sympathy for the woman he betrayed. Some could argue that that hatred comes out in that way because of his love for his brother and facing the woman who broke Bill's heart, and obviously still loving Bill because he does have the sword he was gifted. I would give this theory a mostly cloudy rating. He's never connected to this theory or this look on Bud as someone sympathetic or somebody who has a heart, at least for Beatrix. But though not connecting with it, I'll leave you with this reading reply from Prater66. He says, what fits in this theory, quote, is the relationship of a samurai sword and the soul. When Bud went along with the massacre, he sold his soul in El Paso, just like the sword, end quote. Bud loved Beatrix. Sadly, the user account has been deleted, but this is the theory that really opened my eyes about the potential of Bud as a character. And the two before from Reddit were replies to this theory, so shout out to them and I hope that they're doing alright. Quote, this was the cause of his fallout with Bill. Bill and Beatrix were lovers. Bud knew this, but would never try to do anything against his brother or the woman he loved. Obviously, he began resenting them, Bill for being the object of Beatrix's affection, and Beatrix for not loving him back, despite probably never having the guts to tell her about his feelings. Even the way he attempted to kill her, bury her alive in some dingy wooden coffin with some lanky rope and a flashlight to boot, if you think about it, it's almost as if he wanted or expected her to escape. Bud probably knew about Beatrix's training with Pai Mei, and that she was the most skilled, deadliest of the squad. Thus, there was a fair chance she'd manage to break free. He was perfectly fine with her dying or breaking free and killing him. Beatrix suffocates and dies. He redeems himself with his brother while also getting back at the woman who rejected him. Beatrix gets out and more than likely kills him. Again, redemption. He redeems himself with the woman he loves. Quote, she deserves her revenge, end quote. To me, this still just makes sense. From the self-exile to the rift between Bill and Bud, but also not letting his feelings for Beatrix get in the way of his brotherhood. You could look at his retirement as punishment for what happened at the Two Pines when saying that woman deserves her revenge and we deserve to die. Even with that context, it makes sense why Elle would be so angry, because for her, she may look at Bud killing Beatrix as a gross guy getting his get back on a woman who rejected him, when she sees herself as Beatrix's true rival and the one worthy of her death. Even before he buries her, he says, I want to bury you, then a deep exhale. To me, this choice feels personal. It feels like he gets off on her suffering in particular. And like the post says, dying by Beatrix if she escapes is fine because it's the woman he loves and betrayed. And if not, he killed the woman who broke Bill's heart. Even when talking to Elle, he says, I told Bill she's smart for a blonde, when he already thinks she's gone, so I assume. So his vitriol towards B feels personal, though it feeling random because of no context or insight. But the acting on Uma Thurman's part, especially before she gets buried, says a lot for me. Without saying anything, I see a woman scared of a man she knows too well, which might aid into why she tries to be stealthy when killing him because of the ruthlessness she knows he's capable of, and knowing that his feelings could have contorted into a worse monster inside. I would give this theory a sunny rating, but all the theories push against this one, and because Bud is such an open-ended character, I like that I have my headcanon I work with, but you may completely disagree. Let me know how you interpret Bud in the comments down below, please, because I know niggas love him, and I know that people will disagree, and I'm excited to hear what you guys think.
Bill, it's your baby.
I overreacted.
You overreacted? Is that your explanation?
No, I didn't say I was gonna explain myself.
Part 5, Snake Charmer. We've reached the final boss, the baby daddy himself, Big Bill / codename Snake Charmer. I find David Carradine's performance to be alluring in the way he articulates his thoughts. He balances realism and the fantastical. Though knowing he's a cold-hearted killer, it seems like he almost sees himself as an artist as well. In the way he presents himself, and even when presenting the divas, like pulling up in the all-black suits during the day in El Paso, Texas. There's an attention to detail when crafting the character and slowly revealing him in the first film and in Volume 2. It seems like QT, when writing Bill, had the character embody that same attention to detail. But the reason this whole journey starts is because of Bill's emotion when losing Beatrix and finding her again. Bill and Beatrix are a toxic pairing because, for me, there's no doubt that they love each other. But the benefits of their relationship feel very one-sided. Bill being the boss of Beatrix, but also her lover, is already a strange dynamic. There's also slight dialogue of Bill saying that he found Beatrix when she had no one, It's up to you to assume what the context of that is. Did he find her when she was a child, which means grooming? Did he manufacture her isolation to have her to himself? Or did their paths cross naturally at an appropriate age and they just fell in love? We'll never know, and the way you look at their origin I feel kinda has to shape how you see their end. But to backtrack, an important detail I noticed when Bill shows up to the wedding rehearsal to say his goodbye to Beatrix is that it showcases the flaw in Beatrix's thinking about their relationship. She thinks she has control, she thinks she's safe, not because Bill can't hurt her, but because she thinks he never would, that he loves her too much, even after her betrayal, leaving him without a word, with their baby in her stomach. You can see the fear in her eyes, but also the safety she's hoping for. And the sad part is that Bill sees it too, and uses that to lull her senses asleep, when there are many red flags that this is going to go horribly, though not being able to do much about it anyways. Which only emboldens more the bride persona. Though that not being a moniker she calls herself, it's a separation from her past, from her sense of safety, from her found family with the divas, and a crystallization of the betrayal she faced. In moments of combat with each one, you can see the difference between Beatrix and the bride by the way she looks at them, either with compassion or rage, and that is a visual representation of her inner conflict when killing these people she had love for in some way. Bill says, if he's the man you want, then stand by him. His emotions made him feel insecure, a feeling he probably hasn't felt often. I think he says this, giving her one last out to take his hand and walk out of the church as the rest of the squad kills the wedding party. But Beatrix didn't leave Bill for Tommy, the man she's marrying, or because she doesn't love Bill. It's the life they live together that makes Beatrix run. But saying thank you to Bill isn't just for letting her go, but what he gave to her life. She was grateful right before tragedy. After the wedding, she is gunned down. Bill walks up to Beatrix and asks, "Do you find me sadistic?" as he wipes the blood from her face. He says, "I'd like to believe you're aware enough, even now, to know there's nothing sadistic in my actions. Or maybe towards those other jokers, but not you. No, kiddo. At this moment, this is me at my most masochistic." In this moment, as he reloads his gun, getting ready to pull the trigger on the woman he loves while she's pregnant, the last thing he wants her to hear is that this hurt him more than it hurts her. And I find that so evil that I have nothing else to say about it. When Beatrix reaches Bill's villa, it's a really cool moment where for a couple seconds before BB says, "Freeze, mommy," it almost looks like she can tell that's her daughter without having ever met her. Uma Thurman is incredible in both movies, but when holding BB, the look she gives Bill is terrifying, and the juggling she's doing with her emotions, because the last man on her kill list, the most important man on her kill list, is right there. But not only is he the man she loves, but he's been raising their child that she thought was dead. It challenges her resolve in a way that she probably never had been challenged before in her life. And I think Uma Thurman kills it, but David Carradine is great too, especially as they discuss further about morality through the vessel of BB. In the Emilio story, where Bill tells Beatrix about how BB killed her pet fish, I see this as a moment of clarity for Bill, being able to show Beatrix that you can't run away from life or death, same as you can't run away from BB being a killer when she is both of them. And to both of them, and most parents, they would hope she's the best parts of them individually. But to Bill, killing is what he does best, and what Beatrix does best. So why wouldn't you want that passed down to BB? It's a cool look into his psychology, and though being an interesting man and understanding how Beatrix fell for him, it's unnerving how he can see the world in such a backwards way and deliver his message with such conviction. Same as the Superman metaphor used in the film. Bill believes that Clark Kent is the alter ego and Superman is who he wakes up as, but any comic book or movie fan of Superman most likely would disagree. But it makes sense why he would see that way, because why would the best part of you be weaker in Bill's eyes? That's why he never could have understood why Beatrix left him, because why would you choose a life with less money and not being the killer you are? The last conversation Bill and Beatrix has is not only impactful, but well written and greatly acted. Bill says he doesn't think Beatrix can tell the truth about how she feels about him to him or herself, understanding why he feels this way because of the betrayal he feels, and after finding out the woman you love faked her death to not be with you, why would you believe anything she says? But I don't agree with this assessment. I think Beatrix knows she loves Bill, same as she loved some of the others on her kill list, in her own way, and in different degrees. But love doesn't change the inevitable, and all of their deaths, including her own, is inevitable. Bill asks, All these people you killed to get to me felt damn good, didn't they? Beatrix says, yes. He asks, every single one of them. She hesitates, then says, yes, with reluctance, not being able to hold back tears. Beatrix is a killer, no matter what angle you look at her from, but the enjoyment of her killing isn't all from it being natural for her. I'll give Blll the Crazy 88 scene. You can see her having fun killing in that scene. It's also important to know that's the first time she had been challenged physically in that way, and I bet there was a sense of euphoria in knowing how powerful of a warrior she still was. But in my interpretation, each of the slayings of her former squad took pieces away from her soul, pieces away from Beatrix, forming further into the bride. Even if she enjoyed the revenge, her saying yes to that question while crying is acknowledging the duality within herself, and that regardless of what happens with Blll, if there was a chance for Beatrix to be saved, it's gone. But she can still save BB from this life, which is her reasoning for leaving Blll in the first place when telling him about her last assignment. Before the strip turned blue, she was his woman. After the strip turned blue, she was a mother first. Blll asks, why didn't you tell me before? And Beatrix says that he would have claimed her and brought BB into a life of assassinations and combat. To Blll though, you gotta add the large sums of money that come with that lifestyle too. To me, this is an indication of what Beatrix might have always hid from the squad and Blll, that maybe there was a better life than this. And if Blll did find her at a young age and this life is all she's known, finding out she was pregnant made her want to fight as hard as she could to give whatever that better life is to her daughter. Blll says one thing in these two movies that I actually agree with. It wasn't her choice to make. Now again, that's assuming there wasn't grooming or abuse involved in their relationship before all of this tragedy and awful choices, and not justifying his actions in any way. But if you think about it, the catalyst of this movie could have maybe been avoided by an honest conversation between two people who loved each other. And if they believed in the other, maybe a compromise could have been found, and maybe people would be alive like the people in the wedding reception who were being used as a cover by Beatrix to escape her old life, and she brought all of them into Blll's crosshairs because of her choices. Not defending Blll, again, just saying the quiet part out loud. Throughout the entire confrontation, I think Blll is trying to win her back, showing he kept BB alive and how good of a dad he is now. He feels little remorse for his actions, saying, I overreacted. But I do think if Beatrix came back to him, he'd welcome her with open arms. I feel this way especially because he knows Beatrix didn't kill Bud, because poison isn't her style. But at the last portion of their conversation, she says the line,
You and I have unfinished business.
Baby, you ain't kidding.
Cool little flashes of choreography, and then QT's Chekhov's gun comes back when Beatrix uses the 5-point palm exploding heart technique, killing Blll with the technique his master never taught him, but taught the woman he loved. The face on Beatrix right before delivering the final blow to Blll seems like it encompasses so much history and so much rage. I love it. But before we finish my analysis, I'm gonna try my best to connect something. To me, there is a reason why the last Padme and Beatrix scene we have is them sitting at a table and B earning his respect by not giving up. And the last Blll and Beatrix scene we have is them sitting at a table and B using Padme's technique to end Blll. The way I connect these scenes is through themes of dignity, respect, and love. Padme says, if you want to eat like a dog, you can eat and sleep outside like a dog. If you want to live and sleep like a human, pick up those sticks. When connecting this statement to Blll and Beatrix, Blll loves her, but her life with him was by his command, like a dog. And the moment she found something to live for outside of him, she wanted to be free. She wanted to be human. Maybe not for herself, but she still pursued a better life despite how hard that must have been. In killing Blll with Padme's technique that he only passed down to her, doing that only to Blll is a sign of respect and love to Blll as Padme's student and Beatrix's love. She could have hit anybody with that move for the entire duration of both movies, but she only did it to Blll, not because she had to, but because in that being the last strike given, he dies with dignity, and with Beatrix and Padme forever in his heart.
Going back and forth and spun this idea together of this assassin who tries to leave the business and get married. And
one of the things she was like, Quentin, what if the first time we see the bride, okay, she's beaten up, blood all over her face, but when we see her, she's wearing a bridal gown. All right, and that was when the bride was born.
Part 6, Q and U. In the last part of my analysis, I want to step outside of the film and talk about the two minds that made this possible, Quentin Tarantino and Uma Thurman. The history between these two individuals is rocky, to say the least. Quentin and Uma met during the making of Pulp Fiction. At the time, Uma didn't want to act that much anymore, but QT saw her as another muse that he could use in his further films and obviously saw worth in her aesthetic, making her the iconic cover for Pulp Fiction. During filming, QT told Uma that he had an idea for a new film that he thought she'd be great for. They talked over the base idea, QT bringing his love for genre films, and Uma using her experience as a new mother. Eventually, QT came up with the title Kill Bill, but nothing more than that. Years later, after the release of Jackie Brown, Uma saw QT somewhere and asked him when they were doing Kill Bill, and the rest was history. At least you'd hope so. But the experience shooting the film wasn't the best. One of Tarantino's biggest supporters and closest friends at the time was Harvey Weinstein, a man known for being known for all of the wrong reasons and currently serving a 16-year jail sentence thanks to the Me Too movement. But before his horrible actions were revealed to the public, he was the head and founder of the Weinstein Company, the production company that financed most of Tarantino's films, including Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. On February 3rd, 2018, 16 years after the release of Kill Bill Volume 1, Uma Thurman's interview with the New York Times was released. In the article, she speaks on her experiences with sexual assault, one of the incidents being an experience where Harvey Weinstein tried to force himself onto Thurman, but was ultimately unsuccessful. After 9 months of filming for Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, close to the finish line with 4 days left, Uma Thurman was asked by Quentin to perform a car stunt, but she wasn't comfortable. In Quentin's statements about the day, he says she didn't fight him on doing the stunt, and in the New York Times article it says, quote, producers say they do not recall her objecting, end quote. But Uma Thurman is adamant that she wanted a stunt person to do the stunt because the car wasn't safe and she would have to do 40 miles per hour on a sand road. What happened next is, in Quentin Tarantino's words, quote, one of the biggest regrets of my life, end quote. And in the moment, in Uma Thurman's words, after crashing, she thought, quote, I'm never going to walk again, end quote. After the completely avoidable car crash happened on set, Uma Thurman requested the footage of the crash and to see the vehicle, but Miramax would refuse unless she signed a document releasing them of any consequences of future pain and suffering. She would never sign these documents, and so the footage was locked up and never shown to her until 15 years later, when Quentin Tarantino delivered it to her personally, coincidentally around the same time Harvey Weinstein was getting closer and closer to conviction. In Uma's words, quote, Quentin finally atoned by giving it to me after 15 years, right? Not that it matters now with my permanently damaged neck and my screwed up knees. When they turned on me after the accident, I went from being a creative contributor and performer to being like a broken tool. Harvey assaulted me, but that didn't kill me. What really got me about the crash was that it was a cheap shot. I had been through so many rings of fire by that point. I had really always felt a connection to the greater good in my work with Quentin, and most of what I allowed to happen to me and what I participated in was kind of like a horrible mud wrestle with a very angry brother. But at least I had some say, you know? End quote. To add some more context to the last statement, Quentin Tarantino chose to do the honors when it came to some of the degradation Beatrix goes through in Kill Bill, in forms of spitting on her in place of Michael Madsen as Bud, and choking her with a chain in the fight scene with Go-Go and the Crazy 88. It's also important to note that after Kill Bill Volume 2 released, Quentin's next film was one half of a Grindhouse double feature with Robert Rodriguez. In Quentin's film, Death Proof, it follows a crazy stuntman who lures women into safety and kills them with his car. I will be honest, I enjoyed this film when I was younger, still do in ways, and now knowing the timing of the film either makes Tarantino tone deaf, idiotic, or more of a monster than I thought he was already. Uma's last words in the New York Times article are, quote, personally, it has taken me 47 years to stop calling people who are mean to you in love with you. It took a long time because I think that as little girls we are conditioned to believe that cruelty and love somehow have a connection, and that is like the sort of era that we need to evolve out of, end quote. I give all this information at the end of this video because I think it's an important part of the analysis. I can sit here and talk about how awesome this movie is visually and how great the writing and acting is, because I believe it is. But my favorite part of this movie is Uma Thurman for her incredibly iconic performance as Beatrix Kiddo. And to know that that was her experience is incredibly sad and taints the entire movie for me. And I think it should for all of us, because we get to freely enjoy the art without suffering for it like some do, with their pain never being known to the public. I see the beautiful metaphors and allegories within this bloody and gory film because I choose to. And I choose to do the same with the very bad things that happened to a very great performer who lost a lot in pursuit of creating something great. And as fans of Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, I think we all should be thankful for Uma Thurman and her sacrifice. And us as a people should know for certain that no matter how good the art is, nothing that is entertainment is worth this sacrifice. And if you think it is, I highly encourage you to ask yourself why. This isn't to deter you from watching the whole bloody affair, but I do hope that if you do go see it after watching this video, or you watch this video after seeing the film again or for the first time, that you just have appreciation for Uma Thurman as an actress and as a person. I won't lie, I have no way to tie this back into the narrative of the film or some shit. I just had to share that with you all for the ones who didn't know and for the ones who would have rather not heard about it. I can't force you to listen to anything I say, and I don't know what the message of this sad story is, except Uma survived just like the bride and was strong enough to tell her story. But that doesn't mean this is the end of that behavior. And Quentin Tarantino will remain beloved for now, until the pendulum shifts and he's just another critiqued legend that has passed away, cheered and booed into the afterlife. All I can say is the heart and art are corruptible, and we all should ask ourselves if we are going in the right direction. If not for us, then for the youth. That's how maybe these stories aren't so inevitable. Thank you for watching.